Hi everybody, hope you're all well and staying safe. I hope you're all safe and staying well, whichever way round, just make sure you're doing both. Now welcome to this episode of Lightroom Bite Size, which has suddenly become Photoshop Bite Size, which is the natural progression, isn't it? Now, I want to show you how I took a photograph of a model, Sophie, and took her across into Photoshop, and I created a really unique effect. Now I did it by putting a piece of glass over her face and then adding some rain effects. We don't even know that's working. But yeah, and it creates this great look where it looks like Sophie's behind a pane of glass when it's raining. You'll see. Now it's nothing you can't do. It's a little bit complicated, but I'm sure you can do it. So I hope you enjoy the video and stay safe, and I hope to see you soon. Photoshop is amazing, and it gives you countless opportunities to edit a photograph in so many different ways. And what I tend to do is I will do my initial skin retouching, and you may well have seen this image before in another tutorial I've done, but that's the way Sophie came from the camera, and after skin retouching she looked like that. Now I then took that and created this look here. And this is quite stylized with the newsprint on the top. So if you want to watch that tutorial, by all means, well, watch this one first and then go and watch that one. But yeah, that was, I say in a previous tutorial, I showed you how to do that. But in this tutorial, I'm going to take this image. So this is the corrected image, and I'm going to apply edits to make it look like this. And it looks great, doesn't it? So Sophie's behind a rainy window, and it's quite stylized. Now it's a little bit involved to do it, but nothing you are not capable of doing if you sort of do it along with me or watch it a few times. And there is a download involved as well, and you'll learn quite a bit with this one. But it looks great, doesn't it? Now what I've done is I've applied this over the top, this piece of glass with condensation on and droplets of water, and that is sitting on top of Sophie. Now what we've got to remember is that Sophie is behind a pane of glass, so she's not going to be super sharp. She's going to be quite blurred in places, and obviously in the areas between the condensation, we can, obviously you can see through those parts, but you need to be able to see through the condensation part as well. So we use a blend mode for that. We also need to blur Sophie out behind those areas as well. So what we would do is we're going to make a selection. You'll see once we get going, we'll make a selection of these condensation areas, and then by masks and computer wizardry, we'll make Sophie blurred behind those parts. All will be revealed, don't worry. So let's make a start on this image then. So the first thing we need to do then is to create a duplicate layer of the background. So to do that, it's Command or Control J. And I'm going to rename that Sophie Blurred. And I'm going to convert this into ready for a smart filter. And let me just do that first, and I'll explain what that is. So if I apply a filter to that now, and the one I'm going to go for is box blur, and round about, let's try 24 and just accept that. Now what a smart filter allows you to do is to go in and change that whenever you want. So it doesn't apply it directly. It's smart, and it knows that you might change your mind. So I can double click on box blur, and as you can see, I could change it whenever I want. So later on I might want to change the amount of blur, but for now I'm going to leave it on about 24. So that's that part done. The next thing to do then is to add the glassed pane window over the top, the pane of glass. So to do that, I'm just simply going to go to my Finder and then locate where that is. And there it is there, look, wet glass. And just drag that on top of the image. And there you go. Now in my case, it fits. Or does it fit now? I need to drag it down. But it kind of fits the shape perfect. Now if it doesn't fit onto your photograph, you can obviously use these handles here. If I put my finger on the shift key, I can drag that to whatever shape I want. But in my case, where it was fine. So I'm going to leave it. And then just hit return, and that is now sitting on top of Sophie. Now, like I said before, we need to select these areas of condensation ready to use it really on Sophie to blur certain parts of her face. So that's our next step then. And we do that using the color range. So I'm going to click on color range and make sure that you've got this set to none. So we just go through these settings here. Localized color clusters, we want that switched on. We can take the fuzziness down. And we start off, ignore what you can see here at the moment. That's from a previous thing I've done. But we go to our first eyedropper and we select a piece of condensation. So I've got my sample size set to 3x3. And I just quite simply just click on this piece of, I'm just going to take the fuzziness up a little bit so you can see it. And you can see it selected an area just here. Now I have to work my way around this image, selecting the condensation. Now to do that, I need to change the eyedropper so I can add to that selection. And I just quite simply click all around the image and it will select. As you can see, it's just adding to that as I do it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to fast forward this part of the video because you don't want to watch me doing this. So when you're happy with that, well, then I'm going to change this to grayscale so we can now see what it looks like. And we then can adjust the range and adjust the fuzziness. The fuzziness will take away any little bitty areas. And as I say, we can drag this backwards and forwards, and let's see, that looks okay. So I can accept that. Just click on OK. Maybe just have a little play with the fuzziness. Yeah, probably somewhere around about there is fine. And then click on OK. Gives me a selection then of the areas that contain the condensation. And I need to apply that to Sophie's face, if that makes sense, and blur parts of Sophie's face behind the condensation. To do that, what I need to do is I'm going to switch off this wet glass area and I'm going to come down to the bottom layer and I'm going to put a new layer in there. Then I'm going to make sure that this is on black and white. Sorry about that. Black and white. Sophie wants to come with me then. Make sure this is on black and white. You can press D for that, default, or just, make sure it's on black and white. And then Option or Alt and backspace or delete. Then Command or Control D just to deselect that selection. Now, what has happened is it's created a mask and it looks like this. Okay, and we need to apply that now to the blurred area of Sophie's face. So to do that, I'm going to come up to the layer that is blurred, Sophie blurred, right click on that, and then I need to create a clip and mask. And what that does, it just applies the mask I've just created to the blurred layer. And let me all be revealed when I press it. So there you go. If I now zoom in, we can see that there's selective blur being applied to Sophie. And that's what we need to make the image look realistic. So that's that part done. And I can switch the wet glass area back on. Now, of course, when I do that, you can't see anything. And that's because we need to change the blend mode of the glass above. And to do that, it's just the drop down menu here. And we need to put it on let's see, hard light. So I'm going to switch it to hard light. Now when I do that, it looks very colourful, doesn't it? Now you may well like that, but I don't, so I'm going to change that in a second. But I'm also going to back this off because it's a bit strong. I'm going to take it down just for now to around about 64, and that's looking pretty good, isn't it? However, like I said, I think it's a bit colourful, so I'm going to create another adjustment layer, and the one I'm going to go for is hue saturation. Now if you haven't got this panel open, remember you can always access them from down here as well. So I'm going to click on there, and it's created an adjustment layer. Now I want to affect the colours just in the wet glass. Not in Sophie's face, just on the glass. Now to do that, I press this little button here, this little icon, and that creates a clip and mask. And when we look here now, we follow this across, hue saturation will only be applied to this layer that is underlined, which is the wet glass, isn't it? So let's take the saturation down, all the way down. Do I want it all the way down? Possibly not. I probably want it somewhere around about there. And that's looking kind of realistic, isn't it? So this next step is optional, but what I like to do is to darken the background. So to do that, I'm going to come down to the background layer, and then I'm going to put another adjustment layer in. Oops, put a mask in by mistake then. An adjustment layer, and I'm going to go for solid colour. And I'm going to make sure it's on black, which is all the zeros, isn't it? Or you can drag it down to the corner. And I'm going to click on OK. So that looks pretty awful, doesn't it? But what I want to do is, I'm just going to go to the elliptical marquee tool, and I'm just going to drag a shape around about here. Sort of around about there. And then right click in the middle and feather the edge, and I'm going to feather it by about 200 pixels and click on OK. I'm going to come over here, click on the mask of that layer and do a option backspace, option delete, alt delete, whatever way you do it, and then just deselect that. And what that has done is, if I just show you that layer, it's just put this vignette around the outside, and I kind of like that. And I'm just going to back it off a little bit. So that's without and that's with. Now that's just optional, you don't have to do that. Because I've done that though, it has darkened the bottom bit. I didn't really want that too dark. So I'm going to click on the mask, make sure I've got a white brush. No, I'm not. I'm going to make sure I've got a black brush. I always get them mixed up. Select the brush, make it a bit bigger. Square bracket keys will do that. I'm going to take the flow up a little bit, and I'm just going to wipe out any dark areas from there because I didn't really want that too dark. It's only the top part of the image really. Okay, so that should do it. Now that part is optional. You don't have to do that. And there's many other ways of darkening the background, but that's my preferred way of doing it. Okay, so that's on and off. Now let's zoom in a little bit here, and I would like Sophie's eyes and her features to just come through the glass a bit more than what they are. Now to do that, I'm going to go down to the background layer. I'm going to make a copy of that. So it's Command or Control J, isn't it? And I'm going to put that above the blurred, Sophie blurred, and I'm going to call that, features, and then I'm going to, obviously it's too strong, isn't it? So what we need to, we're only really interested in, as I say, the lips and the eyes. So I'm going to put a mask over here. So I'm going to go down to the little mask icon, click on it, but I'm going to press Option or Alt when I do that, and it creates a black mask. Now remember, we paint on a black mask with white to reveal the effect or reveal what's underneath. So I need to get a white brush, square bracket keys, you know this, you know the drill, and make that a bit smaller. And I'm going to take the flow down a little bit, maybe, I don't know, 30 would be fine. And I'm just going to paint those features back in. Now when I do, it's probably going to be a bit too strong. but I can back it off then with the opacity. So let's just see, and I'll zoom out for that so we can get a better look. So let me just zoom out a little bit, and as you can see, it's a bit too strong, isn't it? So with the opacity I can back that off, and something around about there looks good, doesn't it? Now your image could be different, and that's when you can go in and you know, you can adjust that to your heart's content. Now the other thing I've noticed is as well, I don't perhaps like this bit on her lip, and there's a little splash on her eye as well. Now again, that's optional. You, on your image, it's going to look different, isn't it? But for me, I'm going to go to the wet glass layer, because that's where that is, isn't it? On the wet glass layer. And again, I'm going to create a mask, and I'm going to create a white mask this time. So I just need to click on the icon and then paint on that with black, because that will hide. And I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to reduce the flow, I think, down to about 10. So I can just, I don't want to take it all off. I just want to tone it down a little bit, and tone it down a little bit on the eye as well, and a little bit on the nose, just on little key areas where I think it needs it, maybe a bit more there. So you don't want to take it all off, but just to tone it down. Again, you might not have to do that, but I felt the need, the desire to do it. Okay, so now that is looking great. Lastly, what I can do is change the overall colour. Let me just zoom in a little bit. Now, to change the colour, a very quick way of doing it is just to apply a lookup table. Now, lookup tables is for a whole new tutorial video. All you need to do at the moment is just watch what I'm doing. So lookup tables, you can find it here. It's that little icon there. And again, obviously you can find it. Oops. That's the second time I've done that. You can find it here, color lookup. I'm going to click on that. And then rather than apply one of my personal LUTs, I'm just going to go straight for this Kodak 5205. And I'm going to click on that. And it gives me that effect. Now that's much too strong. So I'm going to back it off to round about there. Okay, and that is looking pretty fine, isn't it? So let me just zoom out, and that's looking great, isn't it? Now I can go in and tweak things now. Remember before the blurred layer, I can go in and adjust the amount of blur. I could take it up, you know, if I thought I wanted a softer look. Let's leave it round about there. And you can start messing around then. If you think it needs it, you can start adjusting it even more. One of the things that kind of bothers me though is these dark lines here. And so I can do something about that using a mask. Now, we've already created the mask earlier on. So I'm just going to click on it and make sure I've got a black brush, which I have. I'll select the brush, I have got it now. And I can just take them down a little bit if I think they're too strong, just a little bit. Now again, you might not be like this on your image because you'll be working on a different image, I would imagine. And I can just take them down, just down here as well, just to soften them. And again, that's all optional. And you, as I say, you'll be working on a different image, won't you? So only if those areas annoy you. And to be honest, I just thought, yeah, they do need to just be toned down a little bit. So again, you know, it's all done on the mask, isn't it? And I think that looks a bit better with them toned down because there's a bit more pink of the skin coming through now. So yeah, that looks much better, doesn't it? So it was worth doing that. And that's what I say, you know, you can sometimes think you've come to the end of an edit, but then you'll spot something else. But that looks fab. I think that looks great. And if you look at how it started off, so, you know, we started off with the basic image. So it's always worth, obviously, spending the time to get the skin retouch. That's your first thing you always do. And as you can see, once you do that, you can create so many different versions and this one is looking really stylized, isn't it? It looks great. So best of luck with your edit, and I will hand you back to Frank. Hey, he's not a bad teacher, Frank, is he? Now listen, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, put a thumbs up. Now I don't mean sit there, but you know, and consider subscribing as well. But above all else, thanks very much for watching, and you take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you in the next upload. So bye for now.
Take a photograph and make the moment last step the perfect photo company. Take a photograph and make the moment last with the perfect photo company.